So, had you had any other treatment before you came across EFT?
As a matter of fact, yes. I tried to go through a couple other programs and just couldn't find anything that actually worked. And I was at risk of losing my family, my wife, my new children. I was at risk of losing my job. I was ultimately hospitalized.
Yeah.
It got to a point where my wife was actually scared. I'd never laid an angry hand on her, but as far as she could tell, she had no idea how far I
Yeah.
would go with my anger. When I came out, I felt better, but I didn't feel like a new man. I knew it was there, and to the work that I was having to put in to make sure that my wife called it the old David and the new David.
Had to
Um,
manage you had to manage the new David a
I
lot.
had him, and it was a lot of work because that's who I was now. I was the soldier. I was the combat.
What would you want people to know about EFT, how that might relate to other people who either who were in war or maybe dealt with other kinds of really horrible things?
Gosh, a couple things. One, medications don't always work, and trying to pacify, an angry veteran using antidepressants, using antipsychotics or anything, anything along those lines is not as effective as you think it is. It just makes things worse. And I don't think doping me and turning me into a zombie was effective either, because it actually just made me more angry.
Right.
But other things that I would call impactful with the EFT is the ability to walk away from what traumas that I experienced, whether it was visually experienced or did myself. The big telltale of how successful this is. I don't break out into the cold sweats. I don't get the shakes. I don't start to panic or any other kind of weird outburst when a memory comes back, because the memories do come back. It's part of my life. Um, but I'm not reacting to these memories. It's just like, yes, I remember when this happened. Just like, I remember that one time I went fishing and accidentally missed the boat, fell into the water. It's just one of those, going through in my mind and understanding that this is something that happens, but it doesn't have to own me. I'm not emotionally reactive to my own story.
I like the phrase you said a minute ago, was it doesn't own you anymore.
I didn't bring my coffee mug with me. I brought the one, but it was like world's greatest dad. That's me. So it's a different person. The EFT, it helped out so much.
That you were even able to work on things that really traumatic events that you were involved with that you felt bad about. It's called moral injury, where soldiers are forced to do things that you would never want to do. In a way, EFT was helpful with that. Could you speak to that a
And
little?
I had several large, but one of them involved, an unfortunate family caught in a bad situation, and that was a guilt that I carried with me. It was so heavy, um, and it was so horrifying. And you're right, it took a piece of my soul with it, um, and I just knew that there wasn't enough there to get me in through the pearly gates
Mm.
after that incident. And after going through it and hitting each trigger point, it became easy. And I would just start over and go through it again. If I had emotional response again, I'd tap through it, and I'd just repeat the process until I was able to move on. And then I would repeat the whole process multiple times once it was all done, just to verify that I had no more trigger points. There was definitely anger in there, and there was definitely sorrow, grief, and guilt. I didn't have a flight in the fight and flight response. It was straight up fight,
Yeah.
verbal outburst, and aggressive moves, throwing things, punching things, kicking things. Yeah, that was a problem, and that's scary to my wife. That was scary to my children. That was scary to my own animals,
Well,
and scary to friends. I didn't want that. I didn't want that, and now my body doesn't react because I no longer have an emotional connection to the problem. It's wonderful, and my life has changed. It's ironic that we're talking about this now, because it was about a month or two ago. my wife and I had our anniversary, and we had the time of our life, and we are just talking. And she leaned across the table and grabbed my hand, and she said, "You know, I didn't think we were going to make it. I didn't think we were going to make it this far." And she goes, "And to be honest, I thought I was going to be a widow, and the fear of you committing suicide, like so many other colleagues of mine have done so." She goes, "It was real on the table." She goes, "I was always afraid to come home
Mm.
to what I might find." And she said, "You know, you've come a long way." She said, "And now look at you." You know, she said, "We're celebrating another year. You know, now I have, with the help of EFT, been able to choose the kind of person I want to be. I want to be a good human. Well, here I am. I'm a good human now, and I love it."
That just touches me, man. That's great.
Thank you. No, I'll tell you though, it's life changing. That's all I gotta say, really. It's a lifesaver. It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
It's my right. My wife's right. I probably would have been dead by now.
Mm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it's a tough one to kind of say, but it's
I gotta ask you,
yeah.
so when you eventually get up to the pearly gates, what do you think's gonna happen?
Oh wow. I think they're gonna ask me. So, any regrets? No more. No more regrets.
Mhm.
You know, my life was my life, and I chose to follow orders. I chose to do things that I've done, and I think I've repented enough, and I think my guilt says a lot, but we can't dwell on the past. We can only look forward, and we can't change what's happened.
Mm.
So the best I can do is just ask for forgiveness. And I do believe that me carrying on the rest of my life as a positive human is what I'm supposed to do now. And I do believe that when I cross those gates, I'll be allowed to.
Enter.